Hello everyone. So today we're going to practice using two verbs in a row in French with confidence. And here is the truth why you still can speak French with confidence. I know that a lot of you have done the work already. Maybe you have spent hundreds of hours listening to podcasts, absorbing content, the videos, the immersion content, and trying to let French sink in naturally. But the moment you try to say something yourself in French, your brain stalls. And that's not your fault. It's just because listening is a reception skill and speaking is a production skill. And no amount of passive listening will ever build the reflexes you need to construct sentences in real time, automatically. You need to actually build French sentences yourself, out loud, to build this ability. So that's exactly what we are doing in this video. And here, I would like to focus on a very basic mistake that sounds very bad in French, but that I often hear even with advanced French learners. And it's, for instance, the difference between I work and I can work in French. So you see the work in I work is a conjugated verb. But the verb in I can work, that work here is the infinitive. And they sound very different in French. And it sounds very weird if you don't make the difference. But here, I'm going to show you how to think to say the right ideas in French. Automatically, with a smart practice. From simple sentences to complex sentences that you are going to make. Until it clicks. So by the end of this video, you will know exactly how to combine verbs in French. So if you are ready, let's start. So let's start with the verb for to work. First, let's just say to work in French. How do you say just to work? To work is travailler. So here that's the infinitive. That's the version with to in English. To work. In French, travailler. Here it's an ER verb. So the infinitive of ER verbs end with ER. That makes the sound E. So that ER is in a way the equivalent of to in English. The to of to work. So here, travailler. And now let's say something simple. Let's say just he works. How do you say just he works? Il travaille. So here we are conjugating the verb. We are using this verb with a subject. Il for he. Il travaille. And that may seem simple, but here I prefer to really highlight the difference between the infinitive and when you have to conjugate the verb, because you see that we are going to make sentences, more complex sentences, where it's not obvious. So here for he works, we have il travaille. And now can you say she works? Just she works. Elle travaille. So same principle, we have the verb to work in the infinitive, travailler. But when you conjugate the verb in the present tense, that's really simple. You just remove the E sound and you just have travaille. So she works, elle travaille. Now let's say the verb for to want. Just to want. So here we need the infinitive of to want. Do you know how to say in French to want? Vouloir. So if you want to remember easily the verb for to want in French, you can notice that vouloir relates to a volunteer. A volunteer is someone who wants to do something. In English, there's also the word voluntary or voluntarily. When you do something voluntarily, that means that you want to do this thing. That's the same root. So, to want is vouloir. So, vouloir in French is irregular, but that's a very easy verb. If you want to say she wants in French, you take the vie of vouloir and you add the sound e. Just the sound e. So, can you say in French she wants? Just she wants. Elle veut. So that sound veut is how you conjugate vouloir, to want, for the singular pronouns. It's always veut. And in this video, we're going to use only veut. So she wants is elle veut. So far, it's quite simple, but it's really important that you make the sentences out loud yourself, even if it's very simple. And you're going to see quickly why. So now can you say he wants? Just he wants. Il veut. And that's it, that's the same principle. We have that sound veut when we conjugate to want. So he wants is il veut. But now let's say he wants to work. So here we have two verbs in a row. He wants to work. And here that's still quite easy. It's like in English. So you can do it. So how do you think you should say he wants to work in French? Can you just say he wants to work? Il veut travailler. So here, what do we have? We have he wants, il veut. So we conjugate the verb to want. That's why in English we add an S. We say wants, he wants. So il veut. And then we have to work. So that to work with the to before is the infinitive. So we need to say travailler. And that A sound is very important for the second verb because it's the infinitive. If you don't say that A sound, what you say in French sounds like he wants work. And you hear that in English, it doesn't sound really good. You really have to say he wants to work. That's why you have to say il veut travailler. And again, here it may seem easy or simple, but this sentence, il veut travailler, is really the basic model that we're going to use in all sentences. And you will see that it's not that obvious with other cases. So here I really want to highlight the fact that first we have he wants, il veut, so conjugation, a conjugated verb, versus then an infinitive verb. Travailler. First, you conjugate the verb, and then you use the infinitive. And the infinitive never changes. Like in English. In English, you always have to work. That work never changes. Whereas the he wants can change. For instance, you can say I want. You don't always have that S at the end because you're conjugating that verb. So here for he wants to work, we say il veut travailler. And now can you say he works and she wants to work? So here we're going to say a longer sentence. So really think block by block, idea by idea. This is an easy sentence. So you can say it, but you need to focus one block, one idea at a time. So first, he wants and she wants to work. First, how do you say and in French? Just and. Et. So now can you say in French, he works and she wants to work. Il travaille et elle veut travailler. So here first we say he works, so we conjugate the verb for to work, so il travaille. To conjugate an ER verb in French in the present tense, you just remove the E sound at the end, so just il travaille, and then et elle veut travailler. So here for travailler, you need the ending et because you say to work. So travailler. Elle veut travailler. Il travaille et elle veut travailler. And now let's say the verb for to take. How do you say to take in French? Just to take. To take is prendre. So that's also the infinitive with the to before in English. To take. So in French, prendre. So now let's say she wants to take. How do you say just she wants to take? Elle veut prendre. So here, no surprise, you have she wants, elle veut, and then the infinitive to take. So, elle veut prendre. And how do you say a coffee in French? Just a coffee. Un café. So can you say she wants to take a coffee? Just she wants to take a coffee. Elle veut prendre un café. So far, that's quite simple. It's the same words order in English and it follows the English words. So, she wants to take a coffee. Elle veut prendre un café. Now let's say she works, but she wants to take a coffee. How do you say but in French first? Just but. Mais. So now you're going to say she works, but she wants to take a coffee. And here be careful, it's a long sentence, but that's an easy sentence. So you still need to think block by block to make this sentence. So first, she works, but she wants to take a coffee. You can do it. You know everything you need to say this sentence, but you really have to focus one idea at a time. Don't rush. Really think of what you have to say. That's really how you can speak French. So how do you say she works, but she wants to take a coffee? Elle travaille, mais elle veut prendre un café. So that's still the same principle. When you say she works, that's a block where you have only one verb that you conjugate. Elle travaille, no a sound. But then you say she wants to take a coffee. So you conjugate wants, you say veut, elle veut, and then you have to take, the infinitive. Here to take is prendre. It's not an er verb, but you still need to say the ending, the dre sound in prendre, because that's the infinitive, and then you say un café. Elle veut prendre un café. Elle travaille, mais elle veut prendre un café. And now can you say we want to take a coffee? With the casual we. So here we learn spoken French. And in spoken French, the we is on. So the spoken we or the casual we is always on, and we're going to say on all the time with we. And with on, you always conjugate the verb as with he and she. So how do you say we want to take a coffee? On veut prendre un café. And that's it. So we have veut to say want, because that's how we say wants with he and she. So veut. So on veut prendre, then you have the infinitive that never changes, and then un café. On veut prendre un café. And how do you say we work? Just we work. On travaille. And that's it. No a sound at the end of travaille. Just on travaille. Here that's really important because the a sound is the sound of the infinitive, and it's also the sound of the past, of the imparfait. So if you say the a at the end, we hear we were working. But here that's not what you want to say. You want to say we work in the present. So on travaille. But now, how do you say we want to work? Just we want to work. On veut travailler. So here, you say the a sound at the end of travailler, because you say to work. You say the infinitive. So we want, on veut, and then to work, travailler. The a sound, that is the equivalent of the to work. So travailler. On veut travailler. Now can you say we work, but we want to take a coffee? So here it's a longer sentence, so don't rush. Think block by block, idea by idea, and let's say we work, but we want to take a coffee. On travaille, mais On veut prendre un café. And that's it. That's the same logic. On travaille. You conjugate the verb for to work. And then we want to take a coffee. So you conjugate want, on veut, and then the infinitive prendre. With a dr sound at the end of prendre. So, on travaille, mais on veut prendre un café. Now, how do you say I work? Just I work. Je travaille. And how do you say I want to work? Just I want to work. Je veux travailler. And now how do you say I work, but I want to take a coffee? I work, but I want to take a coffee. Je travaille, mais je veux prendre un café. So, je travaille, no A sound at the end, because you're conjugated travaille. Je travaille, mais je veux prendre un café. And if you realize what's happening now, you realize that you have to make decisions to make French sentences. And that's something that you can't do just by listening to podcasts or videos. They never train you to do that. But what we are practicing now, making real-time decisions between conjugation versus infinitive in French, this builds your French speaking directly. So if you have tried everything already and this finally feels different, I have a free masterclass that takes this much further. You can get it after this video. But now let's continue. Now that you have the foundation, let's go further. Let's go the verb for can now, but in the infinitive first. Do you know how to say the infinitive version in French of just can? Can. Pouvoir. So that's the infinitive version. You see, in English, there is no infinitive for can. You don't say to can. You just have can in English. In French, you still have the infinitive, that is pouvoir. If you want to remember pouvoir, you can notice that pouvoir relates to power in English. Because when you can do something, that means that you have the power to do something. So, pouvoir. But then we need to conjugate pouvoir in French. So for instance, let's say I can. And to conjugate can in French, what you need to know is that pouvoir and vouloir are bound together. They work the same way. So if you can say I want, you can say I can in French. Do you remember how to say I want? Can you say just first I want? Je veux. So you take the V of vouloir and you add the sound E. And the verb can, pouvoir, works exactly the same in French. So can you say I can in French? Just I can. Je peux. And that's it. So that's the same principle. You take the P of pouvoir and you add the sound E, like with to want, like with veux for vouloir. So here I can is je peux. So now can you say you can with the informal you? So you informal can. Tu peux. Now can you say you work? Still with the informal you. You informal work. Tu travailles. And now can you say you can work with the informal you? And here, be careful, there's a trap, but you can deduce how to say it. Can you say you informal can work? Tu peux travailler. And the E sound is very important because it's the infinitive. Travailler. Because that's the second verb. So when you say you can work, you say tu peux travailler. But you see that in English, you don't hear the to work. You don't hear the infinitive form. So that's where many French learners make the mistake. They don't say the E sound at the end of travailler, but that's very important. So to remember to say the E of travailler, to say the infinitive, what you can do, the trick, is that when you say you can work, what you actually say as well in French is you are able to work. So in French, can and to be able to are the same. Anyway, you use the verb pouvoir. And when you say you are able to work, here you have the to work. You hear in English the to work. So you know that you have the idea of the infinitive. So you have to say travailler. Tu peux travailler. So now can you say I can work? Just I can work. Je peux travailler. So still with a E sound at the end because it's the infinitive. You conjugate the first verb and then anyway all the other verbs are in the infinitive. Except with composed tenses like the passé composé, but here we don't talk about the passé composé. For most tenses, you only conjugate the first verb and then you have the infinitive. So, je peux travailler. Like, I am able to work. So, I am able, je peux, and then to work, travailler. Je peux travailler. Then let's say we can work. Still with the casual spoken we. We can work. On peut travailler. So, we are able to work. On peut travailler. And how do you say we work? Just we work. On travaille. How do you say she works? Just she works. Elle travaille. And how do you say she can work? Just she can work. Elle peut travailler. So she's able, elle peut, to work. She's able to work. Travailler. Elle peut travailler. And how do you say he can work? Just he can work. Il peut travailler. And that's it. That's the same principle. And now let's go a bit further and let's deal with the negation when we have two verbs. So first, how do you say I can? Just I can. Je peux. So far, there's no surprise. Je peux. But now let's say I can't. So the negative form, the negative version. I can't or I cannot. To say the negation in French, you say pas just after the verb. Just after the first verb. Here there's only one verb when you say I can't. So how do you say in French I can't? Je peux pas. So here we are learning spoken French. So there's no ne in spoken French. So just je peux pas. Now can you say you can't with the informal you? Just you informal can't. Tu peux pas. So same principle. Tu peux pas. Now can you say you can't work? So here remember the pas in French, the negation, the French negation always goes just after the first verb. Here we have two verbs, but the pas goes just after the first verb. So how do you say in French? You informal can't work. Tu peux pas travailler. So we have the pas just after the first verb. So we say tu peux pas. And then the second verb is in the infinitive. As always, that doesn't change. So you have to say the E sound at the end of travailler. It's like you are not able to work. So you can't or you are not able is tu peux pas with the pas just after the first verb that you conjugate. Tu peux pas. And then you are not able to work. So travailler. Tu peux pas travailler. Now can you say I can't work? So that's still the same logic. So don't rush and really think of what you want to say. Idea by idea. So how do you say I can't work? Je peux pas travailler. And that's it. So same principle. I am not able to work. Je peux pas travailler. Now, can you say, I don't want to work? So here, not I can't, but with the verb for to want. I don't want to work. And that's still the same principle. Here we have a negative sentence. So you say pas in French just after the first verb. So how do you say slowly, don't rush, really think of what you want to say? And how do you say I don't want to work? Je veux pas travailler. And that's it. So first you say I want, not in a way. So je veux pas with the pas just after the verb, the first verb. Je veux pas. And then to work. I don't want to work. So travailler. Je veux pas travailler. Now let's say I want to work, but I can't work. So here it's a longer sentence, so don't rush. Think one idea at a time. You have the time. Really think of each idea that you want to say. And how do you say in French? I want to work, but I can't work. Je veux travailler, mais je peux pas travailler. So here, in both cases, you have travailler. You have the infinitive of to work, travailler. So, je veux travailler for I want to work. Here in English, you hear the to work, so you know that it's travailler. But then you have to say, but I can't work. So, but I am not able to work. So, mais je peux pas travailler. Je veux travailler, mais je peux pas travailler. Now can you say, we can work, but we don't want to work. So here be careful, it's a bit different. We start with can. So we can work, still with the casual we. So we can work, but we don't want to work. On peut travailler, mais on veut pas travailler. So first, we can work, so we are able to work. On peut travailler, mais on veut pas travailler. Now can you say, I want to take a coffee, but she's working or she works. So again, it's a complex sentence, a longer sentence, but you know everything you need to say it in French. Just think block by block. So how do you say, I want to take a coffee, but she works. Don't rush. Just, I want to take a coffee, but she works. Je veux prendre un café, mais elle travaille. So here you say works, so the conjugated version of to work. So you have to say travaille, no A sound. Elle travaille. Je veux prendre un café, mais elle travaille. And now can you say, we can't work if he wants to take a coffee? First, how do you say if in French? Just if. Si. So again, don't rush. Really think block by block, idea by idea. And let's say, we can't work if he wants to take a coffee. On peut pas travailler si il veut prendre un café. And that's it. That's always the same logic. For each block of sentence, you conjugate the first verb, and then the second verb is in the infinitive. So here we have on peut pas travailler si il veut prendre un café. And now look at what just happened. You trained yourself to think about the ideas, choosing between conjugated verbs and infinitives. So that's not grammar memorization. That's building speaking reflexes. And that's the beginning of thinking in French. You didn't sit passively, hoping that your comprehension would turn into a speaking ability. Because that's the problem with most methods. Podcasts, listening exercises. They train understanding, but not production. And that's often why you can read, but you freeze when you try to talk. And that's exactly why I created the free masterclass that I mentioned. It's 4 hours of practice video, split into 10-minute sessions, where you practice active French speaking. So no passive listening, no hoping vocabulary will appear when you need it. You build sentences, and you create the reflexes that make speaking automatic. So you can click the link in the description to start the masterclass now. If you are serious about finally speaking French, after all the failed methods, this is where you start. You can stop waiting and start the masterclass today. So I see you there.